Hey everybody, this is Gabe Hernandez with Comical Opinions. A number of folks have brought this comic to my attention and said I should probably talk about it a little bit because has a certain amount of importance for where DC and the comic industry is right now at this moment in time and in the social consciousness, as it were. Um, this book is part of their line called Represent. The first chapter here is It's a Bird, which is a semi or pseudo um, uh, fictional retelling of an incident that happened early this year in Central Park. Uh, DC is no stranger to addressing social issues in their comic books. As a matter of fact, on my newsletter, I talk very specifically about politics and what have you, and as far as their place in canon, and they've always been there in various degrees. And the most famous, I think, comic line that I can think of that it really tackles and addresses social issues head on is the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams run of Green Lantern, Green Arrow, where they cover a whole host of topics, everything from drug addiction to violence. I think and racism, of course, being the one that we're focusing on here. Have a panel up that shows a section of the pages from that particular run. This is from Green Lantern, Green Arrow, number 76. And in this section of the book, Ollie is giving Hal pretty decent dressing down, because as a Green Lantern, he's spending so much time running around space and his allotted sector that he's sort of ignoring where his power and where his heroism could do some good here on Earth. The criticisms of this particular issue were that Ollie's being pretty heavy-handed about it. I mean, Hal is sort of fighting galactic forces and villains that are bent on destroying the Earth from the outside. So maybe cut him a little bit of slack. He goes in pretty hard on them, but at the same time, also he does have a point: is you have all this power and all this capability, and how are you using to protect your home planet? Or at least make things on your home planet better. And so they're definitely both sides of that particular coin. The point in this video is not to talk about that, but it just really to point out that DC is no stranger to kind of tackling those issues in a pretty aggressive way. So this issue, again, was written by Christian Cooper, who was involved in a now pretty infamous incident that happened earlier this year, I believe in May, in Central Park, New York, May 2020. In that particular incident, what happened is he's a bird watcher. He's in Central Park watching birds, which is what bird watchers do. A woman comes in with her dog into an area where dogs are supposed to be leashed for a good reason. The dogs, if they're unleashed or running around, they're scaring away the birds, they're attacking the wildlife, and it kind of ruins the point of that particular section. I believe it's called the Rambles. I might have that name wrong. But the point is, he confronted her about it, and the altercation just kind of spiraled way out of control, to the point where the woman in question calls the police on Mr. Cooper and puts a very heavy emphasis on the fact that he's African American, and falsely claiming that he threatened her life. When you see the video, which is now pretty viral at this point, nothing of this. He did not threaten her life in any way, and she's since been charged with making a false report. I think she's been fired from her job and everything else. Is she racist for what she did? I think it's hard to argue that she isn't, although I'm not in her mind, so I don't know what she was thinking at that moment. It's a galactically stupid move on her part. She definitely was trying to use his race as a weapon against him. So in that context, absolutely I think it's hard to argue that it wasn't a racist move. But the whole point of that is things kind of spiraled out of control for somebody, and I'm talking about the woman in question. Her name is Amy Cooper. She acted badly on every single level, and there's just no excusing it. Sort of brought that situation to the attention where Christian Cooper is by all accounts, he doesn't look like he's there to start a fight or pick trouble. Bird watcher, glasses, kind of the stereotypical bird watcher, and for this woman to do what she did is just inexcusable. It's unforgivable. So what happened here is that DC, recognizing that one of their own had been affected by this very serious issue, I mean, nobody got hurt, thank God, but that's sort of what happened. They said, why don't we use this as a stepping stone to kind of help start a conversation through the medium that we are known for. So before I get too far into it, some context about myself. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, so I'm a former New Yorker. I am Latino. My parents are both immigrants from Cuba. So I'm the parents of immigrants, first generation American. So I definitely have the whole understanding of what it means to be part of an immigrant family. Not not at all a stranger to what it's like to be spat on and called racial slurs. I've had that happen to me. It's not fun by any stretch, and I know that it sounds like I'm underplaying it. I'm not. I'm just trying to not like I'm not trying to throw kind of shade in any one direction or the other, but just to letting you know. I'm not unfamiliar with being spat on, racial slurs, just being attacked just because of how I look. And I'm also a former New Yorker, so I understand that sort of that New York vibe to a certain degree. And if it makes the situation any more complicated, both my cousin and my uncle are retired New York City cops. So I have police officers in my family, and I'm the son of immigrant parents, and I'm a former New Yorker. So this context of everything that's going on here is, I won't say, I wasn't there, but at the same time, I'm familiar with a lot of those aspects, both having police in my family and also being not your typical straight white male kind of situation, as it were. So hopefully I can speak to it. Not that it should matter. So when reviewing this, my background as far as ethnicity and who's my family, whatever, it shouldn't matter. But what the reason I'm telling you this is because I sort of have a sense and a feel for some of the things that are going on in this comic more than just going in cold. That's just the point I'm trying to make across. So I want to talk about this book, and I've already read this through several times, but I want to talk about this book from two perspectives. The first one is the technical aspects of it. Is it a well-made comic? Simply just from a review point of view. And the second is talking about the kind of the message it's trying to get across. So without spoiling, I'm not going to give you the whole thing here. Obviously, it's free on Comixology. Doesn't cost you anything. I'd recommend you pick it up just to leaf through it, just so you can make yourself aware of its context. But essentially what you have is Christian Cooper, and these are sort of portrayals of himself and Amy Cooper, who were the two people involved in the incident, is gifted I'm not sure what you would call it, a magic set of binoculars, and he goes out bird watching. He makes his way to the park, and he's looking at birds, but what's happening is, as he's seeing each bird through some magic means that are never explained, the binoculars are showing him people, Black people who have been killed during police interactions. It's probably the most generic way I can put it. And throughout the course of the book, as he's going through each section, I skipped ahead a little bit, as he sees each bird, and here we have George Floyd, which is kind of the most recent incident that's caused a lot of protests and rioting throughout the country. He sees a new bird, and he sees a sort of a new reminder of somebody who had lost their lives in a police interaction. And eventually, as we get a little further in the book, he encounters a woman where the incident in question is sort of being replayed with some degree of accuracy. I think the whole part about the magical binoculars basically disappears once the woman comes onto the scene, and it's never really replayed again until you get sort of to the end where when she's starting to call the police, he just sort of walks away, and he's seeing, for lack of a better term, the ghosts or the angels of those that he witnessed through his binoculars. And then the story just sort of ends with an epilogue, kind of giving you more details about each of the incidents that were captured throughout the course of the comic. So from a technical standpoint, is it a well-drawn book? Yes. I think the art is fine. If I look at the colors, the colors are great. I really like the colors a lot. The drawing, the anatomy, and the renderings of the characters are all excellent. these look like real people. They not photorealistic, not like Alex Ross photorealistic, but real enough that they look like real people. The artist they got on the book did an excellent job. The sort of the more magical elements of portraying the people who have died or were killed, let me be accurate, that were killed in a ghostly or an angelic manner. I think those were nicely done, really well rendered. I really like the coloring aspects. The lettering is good as well. I mean, as far as capturing some of the emotions, some of the fade away where it's going down to a whisper, all those aspects are good. So from a technical standpoint, as far as the artistic rendering of the book, it's excellent. The one thing I'll point out that was most excellent is they did a very great job of making sure they got the details of each of the different types of birds that he's watching correct. Christian Cooper is a bird watcher. I would expect nothing less, but they pulled it off, and they made each bird photorealistic to how they actually look. I mean, if they just sort of done something generic or low resolution and detail, that would have been weird. But they did that in this case, and I think it's very appropriate and nice work there. Now, about the story structure, there's one artistic element that I thought threw it off a little bit that I'll get to, but it's in the context of the story. So the story structure is pretty much, except for the fantastical elements, and I suppose this would be counted as low fantasy instead of high fantasy. This is low fantasy. The low fantasy elements were interesting. Kind of reminds me of like some kind of Twilight Zone or Outer Limits episode in the way that the sunglasses work. I mean, you have this sort of magical element that seems mundane, but once you use it, it starts doing crazy, weird, magical things. I thought that was kind of an interesting element of that. Of course, didn't happen in real life. This was something that was added in for the comic. So that was interesting as well. I would say story-wise, the only thing that really kind of threw it off for me a little bit is it really just doesn't go anywhere past the incident in of itself. There's no follow-up other than you get to the point where he kind of walks away from the conversation. He sees the angels or spirits of those that have passed that he originally saw through the binoculars, and then it just sort of ends. And then you have a picture of the real-life Christian Cooper, and the epilogue is kind of going into the individual incidents that are portrayed in the comic. But from a story perspective, it just sort of stops. It doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't wrap up. And you say, well, because nothing happened. Well, yeah, but there's a give and take there. You're taking a real world incident and then you're adding fantasy elements to make it more of a quote unquote story, but then you end it right from the point where the conversation with the woman in the park ends, and there's no point that's made. Now, I think what they were getting at there is this is the start of the conversation. This doesn't really finish. This isn't a story. It's not finished. This is the beginning. And if that's the intended goal, I think they succeeded in that. So from that perspective, this book is great for as a conversation starter. So from that perspective, it's good. It gets you talking, gets you thinking about why is it that people die at the hands of police in some cases and for very innocuous reasons. That shouldn't be the case. That should never happen. And so it gives you something to think about. It gives you something to talk about. So from that perspective, the art, generally speaking, is very good. The story structure, it doesn't really have a story structure other than it adds in those fantasy elements for the binoculars, but then it stops. So it's not really a complete story. I guess you could say it works as a conversation starter if that's what you're getting at. If that's not what they were getting at, yeah, they need a little bit more here, and it's free. So I'm not sure why they couldn't add a few pages if they wanted to go somewhere with it. But if all they wanted to do is give you something to think about to start a conversation, it works. The one piece that I mentioned as a art choice, which I thought did a disservice to the book, is if you look at the real life people of Christian Cooper and Amy Cooper. The real life Christian Cooper, and you can see it from this picture here, is definitely older gentleman. I don't know his age, but definitely older, whereas in the book he's sort of portrayed as maybe young adult, teenager, or just maybe in his 20s, younger, thinner, more attractive. And then they take the real life Amy Cooper, they made her sort of tackier, uglier, heavier, frumpier. So in that sense, they sort of take the good guy and made him prettier, and take the bad guy or bad girl in this case and made her uglier. Um, they're making this is sort of a low fantasy um, alt version of the incident, but what they're trying to do there is they're trying to call out how somebody's skin color should not be cause for bad things to happen to them. That's absolutely the case. 100%, no matter where you go in life, that's absolutely the case. But part of the way they make that point is they make the good guy prettier and they make the bad guy uglier, which sort of adds this element of uh, making the spirit of who they are, the quality of their character, so to speak, tied to their physical appearance. And in a bizarre sort of way, that's kind of the opposite, I think, of what they want to accomplish with this book. Is your appearance should not justify or dignify anything happening to you that's improper, but at the same time what they're saying is the quality of their character is tied to how they look for the main antagonist and protagonist. So it was a weird choice that I think sort of worked against the message that they were trying to get across. So I'm not sure why they did it, that they felt the need to do it that way, but that they did. You can say, well, this is not a true faithful adaptation of the actual event. This is sort of a fantasy element to it. Right, but they're taking a lot of real world examples of people who have wrongfully died at the hands of police. So they're trying to speak to the real world, but at the same time they're doing it in a fantastical way. But they're doing it in a way such that the main antagonist and the protagonist are somehow exemplified by their appearance, and that's what you want to get away from when you're trying to tackle racism. That's just me. That's my opinion on that. So I kind of, to me, I kind of wish they hadn't made that choice. I almost kind of want them to have stuck to making the characters a little bit more true to who they look like in real life, just to kind of give it that level of legitimacy, a little bit more legitimacy than by doing it this way, by taking this sort of younger, prettier hero and frumpier, fatter, uglier villain. You sort of reinforce the stereotype that how you look is a determination of the quality of your character. And I think that just sort of works against them. I might be focusing on that a little too much, but it was just a sort of a strange, odd choice that really stuck out when I was trying to get into this book. But so that's the review. Is it worth picking? I mean, it's free, so there is no risk in picking this up. Is it a good quality art book? Yes. Lettering's good, coloring's good, drawing's good, everything's good. Is it a good story? If you try to look at it as a sort of bottle issue where it has beginning, middle, and end, no. But what it's trying to do, I think, is to start conversations. So from that perspective, it achieved what it set out to do. So should you get it? I would recommend you get it. If nothing else, just to kind of get a perspective that you may not have considered, understand a situation that occurred earlier this year in 2020 that was really awful, and but take a maybe sort of fantastical view at it. And also they give you information in the epilogue about some of these people had died. I've heard some complaints that the way they have characterized these deaths is not 100% accurate. So what I would recommend you do is not just take this, I mean, it's still a comic book, so don't take these accounts at face value. Go and do some research. And that's the point. It's a conversation starter. It's an education starter, is another way to look at it. Take these incidents, look what they have here, but also go back and look at the historical accounts and the reports to make sure you do your research and really understand how these people died when they shouldn't have. And so I know this is sort of an odd review. It's not your standard comic book review, but I did want to talk about this a little bit, kind of give you my thoughts on it. Definitely pick this up. Definitely read it. When it comes to the accounts of the people who have died, definitely absorb it, but also do your research. And then really think about why are people dying when they shouldn't? And what can we do as a society, as a world, to make sure that it doesn't happen again? I'm not here to solve problems. I'm not here to kind of, and again, the reason I gave you my background is because I understand what it looks like from a an immigrant side of things. I also, because I have police in my family, New York City police in my family, I understand to a certain degree what things look like from a police officer's point of view, and kind of blending the two together. Um, I think gives me a unique perspective that I can understand. There's a lot of bad and a lot of good in all directions. And so we have to work together and we have to talk about these things. This is definitely an uncomfortable review to do. I'll be honest with you. I was kind of not sure if I should do it or not, but if we don't have the uncomfortable conversations, you have to ask the questions so you can learn. When you learn is how you understand. When you understand is how you can talk about things to get to solutions and to make things better. But it has to start with the questions. So I'm never afraid of asking uncomfortable questions as long as they're taken from a place of honesty and a genuine desire to learn. And hopefully that's what I've done here. And I encourage you to do the same. So hopefully you found this video enlightening, interesting. I'm not sure. Let me know. Please, if you found this at all valuable, link, share, subscribe, comment down below. And if you thought this was a terrible review, give me a thumbs down and comment down below. Let me know what you think, and tell me why you thought this was a terrible review. I want your feedback. I want everybody to contribute to this channel to make it the best it can be. And if you haven't already, there's a link down in the description for Comical Opinions, which is my weekly newsletter. I was off this past week because I had to do some family stuff, but I'm looking to get back on this week, and lots of interesting articles. There will be perks coming up in the near future, comments, and your ability to even contribute to some of the newsletters, but you can only do that if you subscribe. It's 100% free. Please consider it. I've already got a bunch of articles up there that you can read for free right now. This is Gabriel Hernandez for Comical Opinions. Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, and let me know what you think. Thank you very much for your time. I absolutely appreciate it, and you have a great day.